There's one more way that we can create slope in a roof or even in a floor slab, and that's using something called a slope arrow. So I'm in a file called slope arrows, and slope arrows are typically used when the slope that you want to define doesn't run perpendicular to the edge. So another way to say that is when we use the slope defining checkbox in the previous movies, it was turning that edge of the sketch into a piano hinge. So if I select this roof right here and I edit the footprint, if I select one of these edges and turn on defines slope, it's kind of like this is a hinge. I'm going to turn that off. What if the slope doesn't run perpendicular to that edge? It doesn't hinge on that edge. It runs at another angle. That's really where a slope arrow can be a very handy thing. With a slope arrow, you just simply draw this arrow, and the arrow has 2 points. It's got a low point and a high point. And you define what those points are, and then the slope of the roof will follow along that arrow. So all I have to do is click the slope arrow. And in this example, I'm going to go from corner to corner here. So I'm going to go from this corner of the building over to this corner of the building using my object snaps in both directions. Let me zoom in just a little bit here so we can see. And with this arrow still selected, if I look over here on the properties palette, there's 2 things we can specify. We can either specify the height at the tail or the slope along the arrow. So if we do the height features, you get a low point and a high point. So in the default, it's saying it's 0 here and it's 10 feet here. So it starts at 0, slopes up to 10 feet. If you switch this to slope, it turns off that feature, it grays it out, and then down here you would actually put in a slope in the traditional rise over run format. So the way you define the slope is really up to you. In this one, I'm going to do the height at tail, and I'm going to accept that default 10 feet, apply that, and I'm going to finish the roof. And let's see what we get. Now, if we look at this, it's best if you orbit in 3D here. So I'm going to hold my shift key and spin the wheel, and you can kind of start to see what it did. So instead of the slope matching just one of the edges of the roof, it actually runs along the diagonal of the roof. And you can kind of see that very clearly with this view here. So the low point is way down at this corner, high point up here. All right, let's look at another quick example over here. I'm going to select this one, edit the footprint. I'm going to give myself a guideline here. Sometimes it's easier to do it that way. I want to use the midpoint right here, so you just have to make sure you erase that guideline when you're done. Let me draw a slope arrow, and this slope arrow, I only want to go halfway. So I'm going to snap to that midpoint, and I'm going to change the height at the arrowhead to 5 feet. And then I'm going to keep that thing selected, go to mirror, and I'm going to mirror around this guideline that I drew. And then, of course, I need to delete the guideline. If I don't delete the guideline and I try and finish, Revit will complain because I haven't got a valid sketch right now. So I have to click Continue and delete the offending line, and now I should be able to finish. And watch what kind of roof I get here. Now, your contractor is going to love you if you do this roof because it's going to be really difficult to frame. But, you know, it's not that unusual, so you could maybe give that one a try. And really the point is with a combination of slope arrows and slope defining edges, you can get all sorts of interesting shapes. In fact, that's exactly what I have right here. Now, what I'm going to do to show you this one is I'm going to take this wall, go down to my little sunglasses here, my temporary hide isolate. We looked at this in a previous movie, and I'm going to hide that element. Now, that gives me the temporary hide mode, and it's just telling me, just get it out of my way. It's temporarily hidden. Let me orbit the 3D view just a little bit here and show you how these crickets were formed. So I'm going to select this roof, edit the footprint, and you can see that it's a combination of slope defining edges, this little short segment right here, defines slope, and then these overlapping slope arrows where the low point here is at 0 and the high point here is just at 6 inches. So it's a very shallow slope. Now, if I select this slope arrow and I kind of delete it, you'll see that there actually is a sketch line underneath. So let me undo that. Now, the important thing is that sketch line underneath needs to have the define slope feature turned off. You can't put a slope arrow and a slope defining edge in the same spot. Revit will argue with you or complain about that. Now, how did I create this? It was pretty simple. I'll just do it over here on the other side. I used my split tool, and I split that wall into a couple pieces. Then I selected this line, and I turned off define slope. So that gave me the flat portion right there. And then I drew a slope arrow, and it went from the end point to the midpoint. So right there, and I defined how high I wanted that, 6 inches. And then I can either mirror it or just draw another one. And I'll just draw the other one from here to here. And again, make sure it goes to 6 inches like so. And let's finish the roof. And you can see that I've now just defined another little cricket over here on the other side. So slope arrows are a way for you to define slopes in your roofs that would be difficult or impossible to achieve with any of the other methods. It would theoretically be possible to use the shape editing tools that we looked at in the last movie to also model these same crickets. So I encourage you to try both techniques and see which one you like better. But slope arrows are a really great way to do unusual shapes like the ones that I had over here, and there really wouldn't be too many other ways to define a roof like that without a slope arrow.